Thank you guys again for tuning into the QAD Customer Podcast. I'm really excited about this particular podcast. We have Scott Gaines from RX Site, who's been a long-term customer of mine. We've been working with him for a long time. We actually don't talk too much at all about what my company actually does for him. But we really focus on analytics in QAD and the usage of Microsoft's Power BI. He's got really great insight and has done some awesome work with running his operations in a very fast growing life sciences company, utilizing Power BI with out-of-the-box integration and capabilities to report on QAD information and data. And what I love about our conversation is it's a really great example of somebody really owning the rollout of a particular product that has a lot of capabilities, a lot of power behind it in Power BI, as well as QAD, marrying the two of those and then making it really fit well to RX Site's business without overly customizing and changing the actual nature of the product. They're using the capabilities in a very specific way for their business. And I thought that was pretty cool how he did that. He presented on this at the West Coast User Group. Scott also is the president of the West Coast User Group, and we have some plans for some cool things we're going to be doing for the QAD Customer Podcast at the West Coast User Group in October of 2023. So definitely make sure you check out that event that's coming up later on this year and see if you guys can attend that, because we'll be doing some in-person live events that I think would be really fun to join. It's also at the Seabird Resort, I believe, which is right on the water on the Pacific coast, which is going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for this episode. We dive into some really awesome topics. So appreciate you guys joining.
To start off, I'll just talk a little bit about my background and ERP. Obviously, I'm using QAD. Mm-hmm. For the techies out there, I'm using version 2015 EE. It's at RX Site is where we're using it currently. But I've been in the QAD arena for some long time, since actually I worked at a company called Nichols Institute Diagnostics, which evolved into what's now known as Quest Diagnostics, which is a big lab that's been in the news because of the COVID and for the pandemic. They were kind of on the forefront of that, but a large national reference lab. So I started using QAD way back then. It was probably in the early 90s is when we first engaged QAD, and it wasn't too far over, after they founded the company in 1988. And then, I've been at multiple other startup companies using QAD, and, I jumped off of QAD, used, SAP R3, and, we implemented that in the old Fourth Shift, if you remember that name from a long time ago, and, used Oracle too. But we always kind of come back to QAD. Just, QAD's a great tool that is stable, but the total cost of ownership is very low. So it's been a good, very fast, clean, and economical system that we've always used to run our businesses. So it's been a good ERP system. But all the ERP systems are missing something. They all try to put everything in there, but they're not good at everything. Mm-hmm. And QAD's been lacking on what is now the BI, business intelligence. And really it's pulling data and being able to manipulate that data as quickly as you can to make good business decisions.
Right.
So that's what I'm here, to talk about today.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So to take one step back, so what's kind of the trajectory been for career wise? Like I know, you're you mentioned with RX Site now. So what's kind of the roles and responsibilities been like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I started off ground floor. I started off in the warehouse. Driving Heister pickup
good for you.
Forklifts, and my claim to fame is I can pick up a quarter, a nickel, and a dime flat on a warehouse floor with the forks. So
That's
I
awesome.
started off
Are you
moving.
like sharpening the
No,
teeth?
no, there's a little trick to it that not a lot of
Yeah,
people know, but you can actually pick those up with a standard forklift. But so
that's
that was
crazy.
so I started off with in distribution, but in the ground floor, and I came right out of college, and moved to California, and that was the first job I could get, and I
Mm.
was glad I did because it taught me a lot about inventory control and materials management, and from there I went to customer experience, and then on to into management, into planning, production planning, distribution, DRP, distribution requirements planning, and then planning the production floor, and then
Mm.
slowly went up to master scheduling, and was scheduling a factory, and
Mm.
had a decision point in my career way back when to go, well, do I want to go into a commercial format, or stay the course in operations?
Mm.
And at that time, I think I was manager of planning and distribution for a medical company, and made the decision to jump into the commercial ops. So I've been in commercial
Mm.
ops ever since. So I'm currently the senior vice president of commercial operations and business
Awesome.
process. So the
Mm.
business process is what gives me the global view of the company.
Yeah.
I currently have a department that's called analytics, and that department is not just responsible for our analytics approach, but also insights, giving
Mm.
different departments business insights on what they're doing.
Mm.
So it's not a reporting department. It's actually a department that provides intel
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the inner workings as well as external workings of the company. So it's kind of a neat global view and a shared service, kind of like
Yeah.
almost an IT, but more on a consulting analytics standpoint.
So is that that clarification of like the difference there, is that mostly because those people are involved and understand kind of what's happening in the
Right.
business?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're integrated into other departments, so they're
Mm.
on staff meetings of our operations teams, our
Mm.
traditional manufacturing, our
Gotcha.
materials management, even our quality systems. So they're involved at the ground level with those people. And by the way, the people from the analytics are quality engineers.
Mm.
That's what
Mm.
their
Okay.
educational background is. So
Okay.
they always have the keen, outlook of quality, but they're also business process people.
Gotcha.
When they
Okay.
hear a
Okay.
problem, they immediately start thinking of what's the process for the solution. So
Mm.
it's been a fun department to kind of start
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
lead. And they're also responsible for our Power BI,
Mm.
strategy as well.
So one of the things that I didn't actually realize that about your background. It's pretty cool, kind of working your way up from,
Yeah.
the ground floor, quite literally. um, but so does that? How does that influence sort of your approach to your role now? Because obviously you've got a lot of learnings working your way through that entire
Yeah.
trajectory. So
It's helped my career, especially where I am now in the commercial organization. It's helped my career understand the business to a level that a lot of people can't. They don't have.
mm,
They can't afford. They
mm,
haven't worked in all those different disciplines. So it does.
right,
It makes me a better decision maker. And
yeah,
also, when we do make a decision, it helps me with the implementation plan, like an NPI, a new product rollout or introduction.
yeah,
Knowing the different facets of planning, production, uh, as well as just all the way down to purchasing of supplies, has helped me, um,
yeah,
and the companies I've worked for implement quicker,
mm,
and
yeah,
more efficiently. So
yeah,
it's like I'm not blind to what's happening in the background about production and having to write all the work instructions and develop their tack time, and there's always a learning curve when you build or introduce a new product. I understand that not just from the commercial launch standpoint, but also from the engineering standpoint, how they have to do drawings and solid work roll-ups. So it's given me that exposure. I'm not saying I'm in depth on it, but I
right,
do understand what it takes to, from an engineering standpoint, to do a engineering Rev A or Rev 1 rather, and then go to a full production release in a medical device environment.
right,
So it's helped me
right.
out a lot. And
Yeah, that's what one of the things I was going to ask is it primarily been in the kind of the life science or med device?
I have,
'Cause
yeah, I've
obviously,
been
okay.
in, the reference lab business, but we had an offshoot that actually produced an analyzer,
Okay.
for kind
Oh,
of a
well.
blood
Yeah.
gas analyzer, and we
Yeah.
produced the test kits for hospitals to run. So it's
Okay.
but it's been in a regulated environment, and sometimes in high tech. So we've done I've some worked at a DNA company down in San Diego that was doing STRs and single nucleotide polymorphism testing and forensics testing on a microchip. So it's kind
Mm.
of a high tech medical device,
Yeah.
company.
That's
Unfortunately,
cool.
they didn't make it, but
Yeah.
um,
It's a cool concept.
yeah. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's been fun. There's some high tech in medical as well.
Yeah, so I know we talked you started talking a little bit about kind of the Power BI and mentioned rolling out the analytics department. The story's kind of funny to me. I mean, it's pretty awesome,
Yeah, yeah.
how you ended up stumbling into that world of at least Power BI. Obviously, you had background in data driven decision making in your role prior to getting into Power BI, but tell
Yeah.
us that story.
Yeah, it was funny. I was sitting there and I got an email, one of those advertisements that really now we spam out. We've learned to
Yeah,
use
yeah.
programs to block domains and everything. But I got a spam from a local company that was advertising a program called Power BI, Microsoft. And at the time, I've never heard of it, but they were offering a free 1 day, and I think it was called Dashboard in a Day. And I read the syllabus and I said, "Oh, this sounds pretty cool. I wonder if it, integrates into QAD, how that would work." And so I went to this session in Irvine, California, in a high-rise building, and it was in Microsoft's offices actually in Irvine. Walked
Oh
in
wow,
and there was a
that's kind of cool.
third-party vendor, and I sat there for 8 hours. I turned around in the class and there was two other people that attended that wasn't even aware from my company that were there as well. A matter of fact, one of the guys is now running our analytics department. He's our senior manager of
Nice.
analytics. So we looked at it, and it was a 8 hour session. They taught you how to use the software, and they gave you a file with company A B Z, and you actually just went through and created a dashboard.
Hmm.
And I took it and I was like, well, this is great.
Yeah.
And QAD has always been lacking on how do you get data out. They have great browsers and they have good reporting, but it's always difficult about if I want to bring this table and this table and this table and have more of a global view of the data, how do we do that? And I've worked with Cognos, which is complicated for a non-technical guy like me, and it is expensive. It was $75,000 or something insane like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so we looked at this offering, Power BI, and it was with an E5 license, which
Yeah.
is the license that gives you, I don't know, it gives you the programs like Teams and allows me to talk in conferences. For $4 extra a user, we could deploy Power BI. So
It's pretty legit.
we just tested it out and said, let's create, let's grab, I think we said, let's grab our CN consignment use and let's see if we can report it. And now it's
Hmm.
company wide.
Hmm.
Many people are just using Power BI, don't even
Hmm.
go into QAD. And the beauty of it is I have probably, 7 or 8 databases, control databases now that are consolidating into one view in Power
Hmm.
BI.
Wow.
So it's able to bring all that together without literally without having a programmer on staff. I do now
Yeah.
under the analytics group, but I didn't when we started for the first 2 years, 2 or 3 years of deployment.
Yeah. One of the things that, as we've talked through this, and to give the listeners a background, I heard Scott speak on this at the West Coast User Group. It was a great session that she did there. There's a number of those, at each of those, meetups. But the one that you gave, I think it was a couple years ago
Yeah.
around this, and gave some examples around Power BI. was pretty jaw-dropping
Yeah.
to me, just because of the depth and breadth of data that you were able to report on.
Yeah.
And like you've said, it's definitely a very global view. You have a lot of influencing factors, even to like sales data. You were able to pull in there. But one of the things I was thinking about as I've kind of surveyed some of the other solutions out there outside of the Power BI side is that a lot of people look in position like we've got out of the box reports or out of the box, whatever. So that's one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is, and I'm curious if it has anything to do with you coming up from the ground floor, but like how to make decisions about what is best to incorporate into those dashboards. Cause you can report on a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But what's effective and how do you determine that,
Yeah, no, it's a good point. You can get out of control with creating, since Power BI is pretty easy to create, right? I can create a report, from the underlying data source. It might not be the most, scalable report, but I can do that. I can do that, depending on the complexity, of course. But what we do is we have what's called a business steering committee, and that business steering committee is basically a cross section of our functional company. So it has, I think I'm on it. It has manufacturing. It has the chief operating officer attends, and all change requests, whether it's a new software solution, whether someone wants to implement a new module within QAD or EQMS, which is their quality management software, or if they want to do a new Power BI report, if they want one created, or a KPI, that has to be a simple form, one-page form that goes to the committee. Then the committee looks at it, and the first thing we assess is security. All right, does this person need this data, and what's the downstream consequences? Especially when you get to a certain size of your company, you're always thinking downstream consequences. And then we look at it, is there another solution that's already available that this individual or person or department just doesn't know exists? So, the IT group will look at that, and the analytics group and myself and all the people on the committee will look at it and say, no, it's already exists. Go here and go use it. If we say, yes, there's a good business case for it, whether it's a report or a, problem they're trying to solve, then we'll say, we'll prove it. And then the business steering committee has oversight of that project to make sure there's not scope creep. Right. Traditional things that usually IT groups do or try to do. So the team is kind of like almost helping our information technology prioritize from a business standpoint, not just from an IT standpoint. Because as you get bigger, each department has its own priorities, and you want to make sure that it's under control, but then also it's meeting what our corporate objectives are. And we follow a program called HPMS, which is High Performance Management System, and it's a management system, but we kind of follow that committee follows that system as well. Is it on our success tree? Is it a goal and objective for the company to do? And so the committee tries to take that credo to the decision-making process. It's not a huge bureaucratic system. You fill out a one-page PDF, you send it to us, we discuss it with you on the call, and we say, yeah, that makes sense, let's go ahead and do it. And it kind of helps us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there was immediately what struck me was a simple one-pager.
It's nothing like we don't ask for an ROI. We'll ask, what do you think the validation strategy is? Of course, quality's on the committee, and they'll vet it out and look at the risk and everything else from a quality system standpoint. But it's really, what problem are you trying to solve? We had some people want to implement a new module within QAD. We looked at it and said, well, it's really, that module is not going to attack that business problem. So we prevent a lot of costly mistakes. Yeah. Doesn't mean we catch everything. There's been a couple projects that have gotten by us that, in hindsight, we should have caught. But I can tell you from a filtering standpoint, we've caught and eliminated potential waste, just by following that committee. And so Power BI follows the same suit, because I don't want the analytics or our IT group creating reports that don't add value or they're one-time hits. There's a lot of reports that people want to just see the data. That's not a report. That's just a query. We'll give it to them, but we're not going to put it up on the Power BI menu if it's never going to be looked at again.
Yeah, it's almost seems as though, especially the ones that you've shown, are very actionable. Like they're oriented towards the business process, which is an action, right?
It's the first thing I look at when I fire up my computer. I have it saved to my web. When I open in the web, it's the first dashboard is the first thing I see. How did I do yesterday? What's coming up tomorrow? I even have it integrated into Smartsheet, which is a project planner. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So I can see how the projects are doing just via Power BI on a dashboard. I mean, it saved a lot of time, a lot of clicks.
Yeah. Wow. I think I want to go philosophical than tactical here. So you mentioned on the IT side and the role of kind of IT in the business and how they can support the business. I think I've seen it change a lot, even in my limited experience in the QAD space specifically. But where would you say technology or general IT sits in a business, and how can someone who wants to level up their game, because oftentimes at these user groups it's primarily IT personnel. Sometimes the people who are forward thinking have people like you at those, and I can kind of guess where you might be going with the answer there, which is one of the reasons why I'm asking it, because I think that there's a way to level up how you're considering usage of the software products that support the business,
Right.
So you wanted you to comment
I mean,
on that.
I don't want to insult anyone, but I look at IT as kind of like when you need a lawyer, right? You're not a legal expert. You have a problem, you go to a lawyer and you ask them their expertise. I look at IT as having that same feature or function. They should be the experts on everything information, whether it's backbone security, anything. They should be our consultants and our experts. I look at the business needs to drive IT, not the other way around. So, in larger companies, of course, have CIOs and they have, chief, I don't even know what all the acronyms mean, senior vice president of IT. But in those organizations, they're enabling the business. They're not just a separate department. They have people that are embedded from an IT function into the departments. So it's really not this centralized shared service anymore. It's like, oh, you have a commercial IT people, and here's these guys. They are there to help you. So my whole approach on what I see IT, and I don't know what the trends are or anything else, but they are a resource that we should be able to go to that helps us enable the business, and of course keep our data safe and secure and everything else. But I don't. If you're a business that's being run by IT, then something's probably wrong. I mean, it's no offense, but the business needs to drive the IT strategy, and IT is there to enable the business, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think of it often as like a hand and an arm, right? Like if you just send the hand in to go figure out where to go with things, it's like how do you move that effectively, and how does it integrate into the entire system, right?
Right.
But they could be the actionable work, like there's work that's involved with rolling out these different supporting applications or modifying them to support the business in the right way.
Yeah.
So there's a role, and a very important role.
Yeah.
But if it's if it's isolated, it's obviously out of place.
Yeah. And well, it's a good point that you make, because one of the problems that I always see and hear is that IT-driven projects. Let's take an ERP system implementation. If IT is the lead driver of that project, it usually adds about double the time and double the cost to get it done. You have to have somebody from the business that's vested in the software, that's going to get the benefit of that software package. They have to drive it. And like your product, I think DocLib, right?
Yep.
Our finance group wanted that product. They led the charge on the implementation and the training. And it's a successful product that I use just about every day.
Yeah.
So you can't have, in my opinion, once again, having a strategy with IT driving those business projects, it never really works well. because first of all, they don't understand the business like they should, and that's what an ERP system is. It's a process. You're implementing a new process that enables the business. It's not. It is an IT solution, but really, it's changing the way that you do business. And it's a good point that you say our user groups, traditionally have been the West Coast user groups probably been about 60 to 70% IT, but we're changing that on our next meeting, which is in October down in Oceanside, California. We're really
It's a nice, beautiful view there.
It is, yeah. It's a great
Yeah.
a little beach town that's
Yeah.
cleaned up over the last 15, 20 years. So it's kind of a reintroduction to Oceanside. But we're really focusing on functional users. So we're looking at global supply chain people that hit a keyboard, that use the software every day, that need to learn. So not that we're not going to not invite our friends, but we're going to have a larger population of actual users of the software this year, and I'm excited about it, about getting out there with inviting those user discipline.
Yeah, that's going to be cool. The other thing that what you mentioned made me think of was kind of the change management and how you roll out change, because a lot of these IT projects inherently have change, even with Power BI, and business process. Inherently, it's changing the business process to drive efficiency, lower cost, increase growth, whatever that goal might be for any particular project. And in order to do that, right, you need somebody that's involved
Yeah.
in the day-to-day so they can communicate in that language. Maybe you can start walking us down a few of the more tactical applications that you've done with Power BI. I know you've mentioned some sales type applications, things of that nature, and I'd like to hear a little bit about what the change management looked like, as a part of that. Because if somebody from IT is listening to this, and they've never really experienced it, or somebody in the business is listening to this, be like, I really want this. It's like, how do they navigate that within their business? Your example might be a good one because it's obviously successful.
Yeah. I mean, it's when we identified that, hey, Power BI might work for us, let's trial it. We connected it to QAD's test. We have a test, dev, and prod environment, at the company, like most med device companies do. So what we did is we said, well, let's connect it to our test database. I think it was our first link was ODBC. And we just, connected it and ran with it and started developing reports. And when we realized, hey, this is a scalable solution, we're onto something, we developed a subset of data. It's like, hey, how does it? And of course, it's all on your mobile phone. It's also, optimized you can optimize it for cell phones, which is a very easy user tool. You can, drag and drop on your user phone. And then, so what we did is we said, okay, we want to deploy this into production. We have a running live version on test. We went into the security mode and looked at, hey, who can access this data and who shouldn't access the data. And we set up that security on the back end through Power BI. The nice thing, by the way, Power BI is coming out with new features at a very rapid pace. So I think it's a very strategic. I don't know much about Microsoft, but it seems to be very strategic for them. They release a new, like a PowerPoint integration, where it's basically a live dashboard within PowerPoint. They have a new Excel feature. Now you can actually create a report in Power BI and then convert it to an Excel, and you can then just use Excel live connected to Power BI. So they come out with these neat little features and graphs and mapping software and heat maps all the time. So it looks like they're, really focusing on it. But then from to your point is we did a business systems request. We want to use Power BI as a BI tool right now. It wasn't a hard justification because we didn't have a solution before that. And the complexity of our business as we scale was, getting more complex. So we needed to have something. So we ran it through the committee. And then we said, yeah, let's move forward. And now we have a fully functional system that just about every department in the company is using today,
Wow.
including a salesforce.
So what are like the components of like the Salesforce dashboard look like? Like what kind of components do you incorporate into there?
Yeah, we don't. First of all, we don't have a CRM system, a traditional Salesforce.com or sugar or any of that. We don't have a CRM system. So I'm using QAD, but I'm using Power BI as that front end. So if I'm in sales, I can look at what my daily sales were. I can look at what my trending is. I can look at my doctors. I can look at my, my new accounts. I can look at all of those statuses within his cell phone or her cell phone. And then they also have dashboards that they can do for ease of use. And the dashboard is just nothing more than a starting page. So then if they want to look at the underlying data, they click on their icon on their dashboard, brings them to the underlying data. So we use that. And they use that to see how their doctors are doing. How are how is the product being utilized? And then it allows them to focus on doctors that might not be up to speed quite yet. It gives them some purview of when they were trained. It gives them a lot of information that are throughout multiple databases, not just QAD, but other databases that we've actually created or we bought off the shelf.
How, with that example, do you handle data, and how do you ensure the accuracy around data? Because I know from our experience, either supporting customers utilizing QAD or rolling out different products, data can be a challenge.
Yeah. And it's, my goal on data integrity, and we actually recently just promoted a gentleman on my team to a data czar. And he's actually in our customer experience team. And with data integrity, when you have so many people looking at data, you have a lot of people that'll point it out for you. So that's the good thing.
That's good.
But I think we've done a really good job with looking at these reports and understanding the source of the data, and does it make sense before releasing it? Okay. But to your point, data integrity is something that we are focused on. It's really good right now, and I can look in Power BI very quickly where I couldn't see that from a data integrity standpoint until Power BI came along. And we do have a report that analytics created that is called data integrity, and it's a series of, does this make sense? Does this make sense? Does this make sense? And it's displayed to our customer experience team, who I look at is responsible for commercial data integrity, throughout. And that's working out pretty well for us. The other groups, like purchase orders and everything else, it becomes very clear if something's off with them. So it's definitely a focus, especially as you get bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's so many, the inputs and therefore points of failure can just exponentially increase so quickly.
That's correct, yeah. But Power BI to me is not, it's got calculative ability, and it even has, AI. They've actually been smart, and they did away with the AI nomenclature. Now they actually call it insights. Nice. So, so it's good. Just an algorithm that's running and kind of tells you some neat stuff. But, yeah, I mean, from a data integrity standpoint, Power BI is just reporting what you enter. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with Power BI. It just gives me a quicker view if I have data integrity issues that are my source data, whether it's in QAD or a different database. Now I can see them quickly.
Yeah.
So it's actually helped me on that end.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I know Microsoft this past month did about a $10 billion investment into OpenAI. So I'm sure you're going to see a lot of the insights, features and functions rolling out here.
Yeah. And the insights is neat. It says number one customer, and that's all you have to put in. And it kind of goes, okay, number one customer. And then it kind of spits out, churns and says, well, this customer has the most transactions, and it kind of does it, but it's not. Yeah. It's cute. How about that? It's a cute feature.
There you go. Nice. So how do you have any examples, or does anything come to mind of how you've utilized one of these dashboards for sort of a shifting the barge type decision, where it's like, okay, we're gonna move in this direction because of what we're seeing in our dashboards. I'm curious if you've had any of those
that's
moments.
A good question. And it's just sitting here, a ton.
Yeah.
We're a new commercial organization. So we have a consumable product line. We have a implantable, product line. We have a capital piece of device. I mean, we're tracking mean time between failure. I'm tracking, service contracts. We're tracking the consumables and all the items that are used in surgery. And I can tell you, we're picking out trends a lot faster than a traditional company that's not using a tool like this. So it's
I mean, speed
literally,
is so
yeah,
important there.
it's literally daily. It's like, hey,
Mm.
why are we seeing a trend and increase on this? So it's something that it's really ingrained in that decision making process, and
Mm.
it's enabled us to move quickly.
Mm.
And that's just not in the commercial organization; it's throughout the company. Power BI now has a trigger feature that if there's a certain error message created on a device, that's internal or external, there is an email that kicks out every hour on the hour saying,
Mm.
"Hey, this thing had it." So, I mean,
Wow.
we use that extensively, in our field service organization,
Yeah.
and that allows me to be a proactive service organization instead of reactive. So,
Yeah.
before the customer even knows it,
Yeah.
that they could have
Well,
an issue. So it's been impactful.
wow. Yeah. I mean, especially if you have sort of the CapEx component and the consumable component, you're not just an implant company,
Right.
you know. That's huge because there's a big services component to both those sides,
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
been helpful. I mean, you still have
Wow.
to make those decisions, right? You still have to
Yeah.
know what to look for. You still have to kind of understand what you're looking for, and you need to
Right.
understand the business. It's not
Right.
to the point where you can hire somebody, fresh out of McKinsey and
Yeah.
sit them behind a desk and, tell them to look at it and
Yeah.
tell us when something's wrong. I mean, it's not that.
Yeah.
You still need business people looking at it that are familiar with their function, to understand it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not nothing's 100%, right? And that's why I
Yeah.
love, the other BI solutions. Oh, it's out of the box. I've never met a software package that's out of the
Yeah.
box.
No.
You always have to meld it to your system. So
Oh, yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you have to spend,
Absolutely.
$275 for a consultant to make a tweak. Power BI, we've never paid anyone. We've never
That's
paid
good.
anyone, yeah, to make a
That's
tweak.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. That's the self-service
Yeah,
component to that sound. That's super important.
and that's the speed, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where, you don't have to engage consultants and have to explain it 3 times.
Well, and then the consultant interprets what the business is saying and implements it based off their interpretation, as
Yeah.
opposed to somebody who's just going in and making a tweak and it's exactly what the business needs at that moment.
Yep.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, how would you recommend somebody learning some more about kind of the BI space or taking advantage of some of those tools?
Yeah, I mean, there's consulting companies out there. I mean, the first thing that I would recommend is to look for a free training, 8-hour session called Dashboard in a Day. Now, they might have renamed it,
Yeah.
but they always give it for free because it's always the Microsoft reseller. I think there's a term
Yeah.
for them.
Yep.
So they
Yep.
always offer it for free to try to capture that, those customers. And the consulting for Power BI, I don't know how much it is an hour. I'm sure it's different everywhere, but it was expensive, $300 to $400. But if you have a savvy IT person that can help you with the integration, and then you have somebody that's, like a quality engineer or somebody like that, you can start this thing pretty easily.
Mm.
Calling Microsoft and say, hey, add Power BI to
Mm.
E5 license. I think you can do it limited. You don't have to do it across the board.
Mm.
And
Wow.
then just start. No, if you want to go more traditional, if you're a large company and you need to start off with a global enterprise, then I'll absolutely go to one of those Microsoft partners and they'll sketch it out for you. But I can tell you, you can start Power BI with an Excel spreadsheet.
Mm.
Create an Excel spreadsheet, dump your customer data or your purchase order data or any type of data you want into an Excel, save it to your desktop, deploy Power BI, and create your first report. I mean,
Be a lot easier to sell it internally when you got something on
you
your
got it. Look what
Yeah.
we can do, and look how fast you can change this. And then, but always put controls around it, before you go.
Yeah.
You'll go get into the wild, wild west real quick if you
Yeah.
don't have a process of control.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, spoken like somebody who's went through the ringer on that one, right? That's good.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, one other thing that we wanted to mention that Scott's heavily involved in is around the user groups. I know we've mentioned it a couple times, and we have the West Coast coming up in October. One of the things when we were prepping for this that really hit me and is kind of your approach and your thought process around what people can learn at these user groups. I think having been to many of them, some of the people that don't go that I speak to are thinking, oh, it's just full of sales pitches for new QAD modules, or companies like, my software company, we're there to sell something. We hope that it's more like this, right? Where neither of us work for Microsoft. If they go and buy a BI license, we don't get any commission. Right. It's just literally this is best practice on how to utilize the system. So I don't know if you wanted to talk or lay out any of those other details about how you're thinking the user group can fit for a QAD, user or customer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for letting me talk about it. The WCOG, which is the QAD West Coast user group, on our website is www.wecog.com. You'll get some information out there. But we have, it's not for profit. We're not trying to make a whole bunch of money. We're just trying to train users and provide users of the software opportunities to speak to other people that have the same problems they have. And an example is we had some finance people that came to the last user group is they're trying to figure out how to manage receiving fixed assets once the PO is received. How do you guys tag it? Business type problems you can work out in a user group setting. So this year in October, I think it's check-ins 29th, 30th, and 31st. So it's a Halloween deal. We're really gearing it to QAD users, and then we're gonna have a technology track that's going to be very in depth on deployment and technical things for our IT folks because they're important. But we're also going to have a global supply chain, manufacturing, quality, and commercial focus. So our agenda is going to be rich. We're going to have roundtable discussions. It's like, hey, users or members of the WCOG can submit burning questions they have from a business perspective that we're going to actually address with a panel of experts. So we're going to do those types of sessions where you can learn, and then we'll have mixers. We'll have separate, topics like, hey, you want to learn about optimizing purchase orders? Boom. How do you use supplier visualization so your supplier is going to do their own, purchasing and remove that burden from you? So we're going to really focus in on business-related issues and challenges this year. And then we'll have, the IT too about what's the best deployment, the backbone. Hey, what about the cloud? We're still on-prem. We're moving to the cloud, or we're partially on the cloud. All of those technical, things we're going to do really focus on. So we're looking for a big event this year, probably our largest since we started. And it's coming up in October. Registration's not open yet. But like you were saying, there's going to be vendors will be there. They will be there. And it's funny because a lot of the solutions they offer can help. Right? Like you've automated invoice approval. That's a big deal as companies get bigger. That's a solution to a problem. So we're really going to focus in on that. And the sessions themselves will be more educational and less sales pitchy. I'll guarantee you that now.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I mean, I think the education for effective action is kind of one of the tenets and core beliefs around this podcast is if it's not based in proper education, if it's not based in actual helping of the business, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
And that I think that's what the best people that are helping to guide those decisions, whether they're from the actual company or they're another colleague or user, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy. But
no.
Anyway.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast. Appreciate it, Scott.
No, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah.
I appreciate the
Yeah.
discussion.